The transport shuttle, carrying Ambassador Rachel Kim, docked with Harmony's Gate just as the station's artificial dawn cycle began. She had requested the early arrival deliberately, hoping to catch some of the council members before the formal session started. Through the viewport, she could see dozens of alien vessels surrounding the massive diplomatic station, their designs ranging from elegant curves to brutal efficiency. Rachel clutched the data pad containing her presentation, knowing that what she was about to share would either save billions of lives or mark Earth as the galaxy's most paranoid species. The council chamber was already filling when she entered. High Counselor Vornith, an insectoid being whose chitinous plates gleamed under the artificial lights, sat at the center podium with an air of supreme authority. His compound eyes tracked Rachel's movement with what she had learned to recognize as contempt. The avian trade, Minister Gallus preened his iridescent feathers. While chatting with a cluster of aquatic delegates, Security Chief Dren, a massive reptilian whose species had once conquered 12 systems before joining the council, lounged in his seat with deliberate casualness. Rachel took her assigned position in the junior member section, a spot so far from the center that she needed binoculars to see facial expressions during debates. Earth had been granted membership only 8 years ago, and the older species never let humanity forget their newcomer status. She watched as 247 representatives from across the galaxy settled into their seats, the chamber filling with a cacophony of languages that the translation matrix struggled to process simultaneously. The council recognizes the representative from Earth. Vornith's voice cut through the noise like a blade. There was no warmth in the announcement, just procedural obligation. Rachel activated her presentation. Holographic images filled the chamber's central display, showing star charts of the galaxy's outer rim. Honorable council members, Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Network has detected a significant threat approaching from beyond our galactic boundary. She expanded the image to show a vast swarm of organic vessels, their designs unlike anything in the council's extensive databases. This is the swarm, a parasitic hive intelligence that we believe has already consumed at least 40 civilizations in the neighboring galaxy. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Gallus ruffled his feathers dismissively. The human presents images but offers no context. How can Earth, with its primitive sensor technology, detect what our advanced networks have missed? Our sensor technology may be primitive by your standards. Rachel kept her voice steady. But we've positioned monitoring stations in regions where the Council maintains no presence. Humanity's expansion into frontier space has given us eyes where yours do not look. She pulled up detailed scans showing the swarms. Movement patterns. They're heading directly toward Council space. And based on their current trajectory, they'll reach the outer colonies in approximately 6 weeks. Dren stood, his bulk casting shadows across the chamber floor. I have reviewed Earth's so-called evidence. What I see is speculation and fear-mongering. The Security Division has maintained peace in this galaxy for 3,000 years. If a genuine threat existed, we would have detected it. With respect, Security Chief, your division hasn't faced an external threat in those 3,000 years. Rachel's words drew gasps from several delegates. Challenging Dren publicly was considered extremely poor form. Your sensors are calibrated to detect internal conflicts and treaty violations, not extragalactic invasions. The swarm doesn't broadcast intentions or follow diplomatic protocols. They simply consume everything in their path. Vornitha's mandibles clicked together in a gesture Rachel had learned meant irritation. The human oversteps. Earth has been a council member for barely a fraction of a standard generation. You lack the historical perspective to understand galactic security. What you interpret as a threat is likely a natural phenomenon or perhaps a migrating species seeking new territory. I have additional data. Rachel pressed forward, desperate to make them understand. 3 of our frontier monitoring stations have gone silent in the past week. The last transmissions showed swarm vessels in their vicinity. I'm requesting that the Council authorize immediate defensive preparations and recall ships from the Outer Rim to establish a protective formation. The chamber erupted in debate. Species shouted in dozens of languages, the translation matrix creating a delayed echo effect that made the chaos even worse. Gallus was laughing. actually laughing, his high-pitched avian calls cutting through the noise. The human wants us to disrupt trade routes and recall our fleets because some frontier stations lost communication. Perhaps Earth should invest in better equipment rather than wasting the Council's time. I move for a vote, Vornith declared. All those in favor of implementing the humans suggested defensive measures. 9 hands, claws, and tentacles rose across the vast chamber. All opposed. 238 appendages lifted. The motion fails. This council will not be stampeded into panic by unsubstantiated claims from a species that has barely mastered faster-than-light travel. Rachel felt her heart sink. She had known this would be difficult, but seeing the overwhelming rejection still hurt. Then I formally request that my warning be entered into the permanent record. When the swarm arrives, let history show that Earth tried to prevent the catastrophe. So noted. Vornith's tone suggested he considered the matter closed. Does the human have any other business before this council? No. High Counselor. Rachel gathered her materials, her hands shaking with suppressed fury. As the session adjourned, Rachel contacted Earth's military command through her encrypted communicator. Admiral Harris answered immediately, his weathered face filling her screen. I didn't listen. It wasn't a question. No. We're on our own. Rachel looked out at the dispersing delegates, watching them laugh and gossip as they headed to lunch. Begin recalling our ships. Pull everyone back from the frontier. If the council won't prepare at least we can protect our own people. Already in motion, Harris confirmed. I started the recall the moment you entered that chamber. I've been a soldier too long to trust politicians, even alien ones. He paused, studying her face. You did everything you could, Rachel. It won't matter if billions die, because they were too arrogant to listen. She cut the connection and headed for her quarters. Behind her, Delta 7 monitoring station sent its final distress signal before going permanently dark. The Council's communication division logged it as a routine equipment failure and marked it for maintenance review in 30 days. The emergency klaxons screaming through Harmony's gate pulled Vornith from his rest cycle. He stumbled toward his communication terminal, still disoriented from the sudden awakening. The holographic display showed a nightmare spreading across the outer rim systems. 12 colonies were under simultaneous attack, their distress signals creating a chorus of terror that made his antennae flatten against his head. This is impossible, he muttered, watching the tactical display update with increasingly dire reports. The swarm vessels numbered in thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, and they moved with a coordination that spoke of singular purpose. Get me Security Chief Dren immediately. Dren's face appeared on screen, and for the first time since Vornith had known him, the warrior looked shaken. High Counselor, we have a situation that exceeds all projected threat models. The entities attacking our colonies appear to be organic vessels capable of rapid reproduction. They're not responding to any hailing frequencies, casualties, Vornith asked, dreading the answer. Preliminary estimates suggest 17 million dead in the first 3 hours. Dren's scales had gone pale. They don't just destroy, they consume. Entire populations are being harvested for biomass. One colony world recorded its attackers literally eating the cities. Vornith felt his stomach turn. Mobilize the defense fleet. I want every available ship converging on the affected systems. About that, Dren hesitated in a way that terrified Vornith more than the casualty numbers. Our defense fleet is mostly ceremonial. We have impressive vessels designed for parades and showing technological superiority. We haven't fought an actual war in 3 millennia. Most of our captains have never even run combat drills. The realization hit Vornith like a physical blow. The Council had grown complacent, so secure in their peace that they had forgotten how to fight. Contact the human. Contact Ambassador Kim. Tell her we need Earth's assistance. I already tried, Dren admitted. She said, and I quote, tell the High Counselor that Earth is happy to help once he formally requests it and grants operational command to our forces. She seemed quite insistent on the operational command part. Vornith's pride warred with the screaming reality on his displays. 3 more systems had just gone dark. Do it. Whatever she wants, agree to it. Just get the humans involved before we lose everything. On the human destroyer Vigilant, Captain Diana Ross studied the tactical feeds with grim satisfaction. Not satisfaction at the Council's suffering, but satisfaction that Admiral Harris had positioned them exactly where they needed to be. Helm, maintain position at the junction. Weapons, I want firing solutions updated every 30 seconds. Communications, keep monitoring all Council frequencies. Her first officer, a young woman named Beth Wilson, looked up from her station. Captain, we're receiving desperate hails from Council ships requesting assistance. They're engaged with swarm forces at System Harper 9. They're getting torn apart. Ross watched the tactical display. The Council ships were using standard defensive formations, tight spheres designed to maximize shield overlap. Unfortunately, the swarm wasn't using energy weapons that shields could stop. They were using biological boarding tactics, infecting ships from within. Negative. Admiral Harris's orders are clear. We hold position until the Council formally requests our intervention and grants command authority. I don't like it either, Lieutenant, but we can't help them if they won't let us lead. Captain, there are civilians on those ships. Wilson's voice cracked slightly. I know. Ross kept her expression neutral, but inside she was screaming. But if we commit now, on their terms, using their tactics, we'll just die alongside them. The Admiral is waiting for them to understand that this isn't a diplomatic negotiation. It's a war, and wars require different rules. The communication console chirped. Captain, incoming priority message from Council High Command. It's addressed to Admiral Harris, but they're routing it through all human vessels. Put it through, Ross commanded. Vornith's image appeared, and the proud insectoid looked broken. This is High Counselor Vornith to any human vessels receiving this transmission. The Galactic Council formally requests Earth's military assistance against the swarm incursion. We acknowledge that our forces are unprepared for this conflict and request that human commanders take operational control of all defensive operations. Ambassador Kim has transmitted the terms. We accept them all. Please help us. Ross felt no triumph, only grim determination. Communications, confirm receipt and relay to Admiral Harris. Helm, plot a course to intercept swarm forces at Harper. 9. All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. The Vigilant and her sister ships broke from their holding pattern, accelerating toward the nearest conflict zone. Ross pulled up the tactical data on Harper 9 and winced. The Council had sent 400 ships against roughly 200 swarm vessels. The Council was losing. How are they losing with twice the numbers? Wilson asked, echoing Ross's thoughts. Because they're fighting like they're at a parade formation. Ross highlighted the Council's defensive sphere on the display. Look at this. They're clustered so tight that when one ship gets infected, it spreads to 6 others within minutes. The swarm is using their own doctrine against them. She began plotting intercept courses. We're going to hit them from an angle they're not expecting. Prepare hunter-killer patterns. I want our point defense systems configured for anti-boarding protocols. The Vigilant entered Harper 9 system to find chaos. Council ships were firing on each other as swarm organisms turned them into weapons. Against their former allies, the beautiful defensive sphere had become a death trap. Ross didn't hesitate. All ships, execute serpent pattern. Don't cluster, don't bunch up. Keep moving and maintain clear firing lanes. Target any Council ship showing swarm infection. I know it's hard, but they're already gone. The human ships tore through the battlefield like sharks through a feeding frenzy. Their weapons, considered primitive kinetic systems by Council standards, proved devastatingly effective at destroying organic swarm vessels. Ross's crew worked with practiced efficiency, each member knowing exactly what to do without needing orders. Captain, we're being hailed by a Council ship, the Unity's Promise. Their captain is requesting permission to join our formation, Wilson reported. Granted, transmit our maneuvering patterns and tell him to follow our lead exactly. Ross marked another swarm vessel for destruction. If he can keep up, he lives. If he falls back into old habits, well, he won't be our problem for long. By the time Admiral Harris arrived with the main human fleet 6 hours later, Ross had carved a safe zone around Harper 9 and rescued 3,000 Council personnel. She had also lost 2 ships and 400 crew. The price of arriving just in time rather than too late. Harris's face appeared on her screen. Good work, Captain. Now comes the hard part. Sir, Ross asked, teaching them how to fight before they get us all killed. Harris smiled. Grimly, hope you're good at training. Corridor Station had been a council trading hub before Admiral Harris converted it into humanity's primary staging area. Now the docking bays overflowed with vessels from 60 different species, all awaiting integration into the combined fleet. Harris stood in the operations center, watching his officers attempt to impose order on what could charitably be called organized chaos. The Telnari captain refuses to accept orders from anyone below his social caste, Lieutenant Sam Park reported, exhaustion evident in his voice. He claims his genetic lineage makes him superior to our tactical suggestions. Tell him he can follow orders or he can watch the war from the sidelines. Harris didn't look up from the strategic displays. I don't care if his ancestors conquered half the galaxy. Right now, he's a liability. Park grimaced but relayed the message. Moments later, the Telnari ship undocked and departed. Harris noted it in his log without regret. Better to lose one prideful captain now than have him compromise an entire battle group later. Captain Torvin of the Corellian Defense Force watched the Telnari departure from the Vigilance briefing room. Ross had invited him to observe human operations, and so far, he found the experience both humbling and enlightening. Your admiral is harsh, he observed. My admiral is realistic, Ross corrected, pulling up training schedules on her datapad. We've lost 4 billion sentients to the swarm already. We don't have time for ego. Management, she looked at Torvin directly. You volunteered to learn human tactics. Are you ready for what that means? Torvin's crest feathers flattened in determination. My crew died at Harper. 9. I survived because I abandoned doctrine and followed your ships. Teach me why that worked. Ross appreciated his honesty. Doctrine assumes your enemy will fight the way you expect. The moment your enemy breaks those expectations, doctrine becomes a death sentence. She activated a simulation showing. The Harper 9 battle. Your defensive sphere maximizes shield coverage against energy weapons. Perfect for Council versus Council conflicts. Useless against an enemy that boards your ships and turns your crew into weapons. So we abandoned defensive formations entirely. Torvin asked. No, we use different formations for different threats. Ross ran multiple scenarios. Fighting the swarm requires mobility, clear firing lanes, and enough separation that infection can't spread. Fighting a conventional fleet might require the exact opposite. The key is recognizing what you're facing and adapting. Over the next 2 weeks, Corridor Station became a crucible. Human instructors drilled Council crews on everything from damage control to tactical flexibility. Some species took to it naturally. Warrior cultures like Torvin's Corellians adapted quickly, their existing combat instincts translating well to human doctrine. Others struggled. Species that had evolved in peaceful environments found the concept of controlled aggression nearly impossible to grasp. Park worked with the Intelligence Division, identifying swarm patterns and vulnerabilities. They're not mindless, he explained during a briefing with Harris and the senior council commanders. They're a distributed intelligence. Each vessel is like a neuron in a vast brain. Destroy enough neurons and the brain loses cohesion. So we need to kill them faster than they can reproduce, Vornith said. The High Counselor had taken to attending every briefing, his earlier arrogance replaced by desperate willingness to learn. Exactly. And we need to hit them when they're vulnerable. Park displayed scans of swarm feeding behavior. After they consume a planet, they enter a conversion phase. They're processing biomass into new ships. During that window, they're stationary and distracted. That's when we strike. Harris studied the data. How long does this conversion phase last? Approximately 12 hours, Park answered. Then we have one shot to hurt them badly enough that they retreat. Harris looked around the room at faces from dozens of species. I'm proposing a coordinated strike on their main staging area. They've been using a binary star system to process their conquests. Intelligence suggests their command node is located there. A command node. Torvin leaned forward. Destroy that and the entire swarm loses coordination. Theoretically, Park cautioned, we've never seen what happens when you kill a swarm command node. It might just promote a new one, or it might cause system-wide collapse. Harris smiled thinly. Either way, we're going to find out. Lieutenant Park, I need a full analysis of that system. Captain Ross, you're leading the primary strike force. Captain Torvin, your ships will form the vanguard. Torvin's eyes widened. You trust us with the vanguard. You've earned it. Ross said simply. Your crew executed human tactics better than some human crews. You deserve the honor and the risk. The preparation took 3 weeks. Human officers embedded with every council vessel, ensuring the crews understood their roles. Harris insisted on running full-scale simulations, pushing the combined fleet through scenario after scenario. Some council captains complained about the repetitive drills. Those complaints stopped after Harris showed them casualty projections for crews that went into battle unprepared. Torvin spent every spare moment studying human military history. He found himself fascinated by the patterns. Humanity seemed to have spent its entire existence at war, either with itself or with its environment. Every culture on Earth had developed sophisticated warfare doctrines. The transition to space had simply given humans a larger battlefield. Your species is strange, he told Ross during a rare, quiet moment. You prepare so extensively for war, yet your crew shows such kindness to rescued civilians. How do you balance such contradictions? Ross considered the question carefully. We prepare for war because we've seen what happens when you're not ready. We're kind because we've seen what happens when you lose your humanity in the fighting. The two aren't contradictions, they're necessities. She pulled up images of Earth's history, showing both devastating wars and remarkable acts of compassion during those wars. Being good at war doesn't mean you have to love it. It just means you respect it enough to do it properly when necessary. The day of the offensive arrived. 30 fleet groups assembled at their jump points, each group containing a mix of human and council vessels. Harris transmitted final orders from his flagship. All groups, final check. Calm discipline is critical. Once we jump, we're committed. The swarm will adapt if we give them time. We hit hard, we hit fast, and we don't stop until that command node is debris. He paused, looking at the faces on his screens. 3 months ago, most of you had never fired a weapon in anger. Today, you're warriors fighting for your homes. I'm honored to serve alongside you. All ships, jump on my mark. The countdown reached 0. Across dozens of light years, 30 fleet groups vanished in a faster-than-light transit, converging on a single system. The largest coordinated military operation in galactic history had begun. Reality tore open in 30 different locations simultaneously as the combined fleet emerged into the swarm staging system. Ross felt her stomach settle from the jump transition and immediately focused on her tactical display. The system contained 12 planets, 3 asteroid belts, and a binary star pair. It also contained roughly 8,000 swarm vessels in various states of conversion activity. All ships, serpent formation, maintain spacing. Watch for boarding attempts. Ross transmitted to her battle group. Around her, 15 ships from 7 different species moved into the flowing, unpredictable pattern that human doctrine favored. Torvin's Carillion destroyer took point position, his crew executing the maneuvers with confidence that would have seemed impossible 3 months ago. The swarm response was initially confused. They had never faced coordinated multi-vector assault on this scale. The command node, a massive biological structure the size of Earth's moon, pulsed with bioluminescent signals as it attempted to organize its forces. Park had been right. The swarm was intelligent, but its intelligence relied on processing time. The human strategy of overwhelming speed was working. Group 7 reports successful penetration of inner system. Wilson called out. They're engaging swarm conversion facilities around the 4th planet. Ross marked the position. Good. That's attention pulled away from our approach vector. Helm, increase speed to maximum. Weapons, I want a firing solution on anything between us and that command node. The Vigilant accelerated, her crew working with the practiced efficiency of veterans despite most of them being younger than 30. This was what Harris had trained them for. Not just knowing procedures, but understanding the purpose behind every action. When Wilson called out target priorities, the weapons officer didn't need to ask questions. When the helmsman detected debris fields, he adjusted course without waiting for orders. Torvin watched this coordination with growing admiration. His own crew was learning, but they still needed explicit commands. Humans seem to operate on shared understanding. Vigilant. This is Stormcaller. We're detecting swarm movement on intercept course. 3 heavy vessels approaching from solar north. Confirmed, Stormcaller. Break off with groups 3 and 4. Keep them busy while we push through. Ross didn't hesitate, sacrificing 3 battle groups to protect the main assault was exactly the kind of decision that separated human commanders from Council ones. Council captains still struggled with accepting losses as part of victory. Torvin acknowledged and pulled his ships into defensive positions. The swarm vessels were massive, each one 3 times the size of his destroyer. His old instinct screamed to form a defensive sphere. Instead, he spread his ships wide, creating a net rather than a wall. All ships implement harassment pattern Delta. Don't try to destroy them. Just keep them engaged and angry. The swarm vessels moved with organic grace, their hulls rippling as they reconfigured weapons. Torvin's ships darted between them like insects around much larger predators. The key was staying mobile. The moment you stopped moving, the swarm would board you. His weapons officer called out hits, minor damage inflicted through persistence rather than overwhelming firepower. Meanwhile, Ross's group penetrated deeper into the system. The command node loomed larger on their screens, its surface covered in what looked like eyes or sensory organs. Park's voice came through on the command channel. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the node. I think it's aware we're targeting it specifically." "Good." Ross smiled coldly. "Maybe it'll make a mistake." She studied the tactical situation. 6 other battle groups were converging on the node from different vectors. The swarm was trying to defend it, pulling ships back from their feeding grounds. Exactly what Harris wanted. Force them to choose between feeding and fighting. "Captain, multiple swarm vessels breaking off from combat with other groups. They're forming a defensive shell around the node." Wilson's voice held a note of concern. Ross had expected this. "All groups converging on the node. This is Ross. Execute Protocol Gamma. Suicide runs. Volunteers only." The comm channel fell silent for a heartbeat. Then voices began responding. Human crews volunteering. Without hesitation. Council crews, including Torvin's, joining them. 12 ships total, ranging from human frigates to council cruisers. Ross felt pride and sorrow in equal measure. Volunteer ships. Your target is the node itself. You're going to ram it. She transmitted the technical data Park had prepared, but before you impact, I need you to broadcast everything in your computer cores. Every tactical manual, every scientific database, every piece of contradictory data you can transmit. We're going to try to overwhelm its processing capability. Torvin found himself among the volunteers. He had ordered his crew to the escape pods but stayed at the helm himself. "Captain Ross, this is Stormcaller. We're ready. It has been an honor learning from you." "The honor was mine, Captain," Ross replied. "Give them hell." The 12 ships accelerated to maximum velocity, their bows pointed at the command node. Swarm vessels swarmed to intercept, but the covering groups sacrificed themselves. To clear the path, Torvin watched his shields collapse under swarm fire. His hull breach alarm screamed. His ship was dying, but he only needed it to survive another minute. Transmitting now, he activated every broadcasting system on his ship. Tactical data, historical records, entertainment files, personal logs, everything flooded toward the command node in an incoherent stream. Across the system, 11 other ships did the same. Millions of terabytes of random, contradictory, overwhelming data. The command node surface began to pulse erratically. The bioluminescent signals that coordinated the swarm became chaotic. Swarm vessels across the system stopped their coordinated movements and began firing randomly. Some attacked each other. Park's theory was proving correct. The distributed intelligence was suffering catastrophic processing failure. Torvin's ship impacted the command node at 17% light speed. The kinetic energy alone would have destroyed a planet. The biological moon-sized structure ruptured, its internal structures exposed to vacuum. 11 other impacts followed within seconds. The command node began to collapse, its surface folding inward like a dying star. "All ships, the node is destabilizing," Harris transmitted across the fleet. "Press the attack. Destroy every swarm vessel you can target while they're confused. The battle raged for another 6 hours. The combined fleet, even with heavy losses, systematically destroyed the disorganized swarm forces. Ross watched her tactical display as the hostile contacts dwindled. By the time the system was declared secure, 60% of the swarm's invasion force had been eliminated. "Captain, I'm detecting a distress beacon." Wilson looked up in surprise. It's Corellian's signature, bearing 273. Ross felt her heart skip. "Helm, intercept course, maximum speed." They found Torvin's escape pod drifting in the debris field. His crew had survived. He had survived. When they brought him aboard, his first words were, "Did we win? We won." Ross confirmed. "The swarm is broken, scattered remnants fleeing the galaxy." Torvin's crest feathers rose in triumph. Then the sacrifice meant something. He looked at Ross with new understanding. "This is what you meant about balancing kindness and capability. You fight with everything you have, but you remember why you're fighting." Harris's face appeared on the comm screen. "All ships, begin search and rescue operations. I want every survivor found." He paused, his expression showing the weight of command. "We've lost a lot of good people today. Make sure their sacrifice wasn't wasted. Secure this system and prepare for long-term occupation. The war may be over, but the work is just beginning." 6 months after the swarm's defeat, Rachel stood in the rebuilt council chambers and barely recognized the place. The same species occupied the same seats, but everything else had fundamentally changed. Vornith no longer sat with supreme authority. Instead, he shared the central podium with 3 other species, including a human representative. Admiral Harris declined the position, preferring to remain military advisor. The role went to Ambassador Chun from Mars Colony. "The Council recognizes Ambassador Kim." Vornitha's voice held genuine respect now. Strange how 4 billion deaths could teach humility. Rachel stood, accepting the recognition without the old resentment. "I bring news from the Frontier Monitoring Network." She activated the display, showing the same outer rim region where she had first detected the swarm. "Our sensors have identified a new anomaly. Different signature from a swarm, but equally concerning." The hologram showed massive geometric structures moving through space. Initial analysis suggests these are von Neumann probes from an extinct civilization, self-replicating machines on a resource-gathering mission. The chamber fell silent. Not dismissive silence like before, but thoughtful silence of people who had learned painful lessons. Gallus, whose iridescent feathers had lost some of their luster during the swarm crisis, spoke carefully. "What is the estimated timeline for their arrival?" "Approximately 18 months, Rachel answered. "We have time to prepare." "And your recommendation?" Vornith asked. His mandibles were relaxed, genuinely seeking her input. "Measured response." Rachel said, "We should prepare defenses but also develop first contact protocols. These are machines, not biological entities. They may be capable of communication and negotiation." She looked around the chamber. "We learned from the swarm that not every unknown is automatically hostile. We also learned that being unprepared is a death sentence. I propose we do both. Prepare for conflict while hoping for peace." The council voted unanimously to begin preparations. The fact that it was unanimous showed how much had changed. Earth's voice carried weight now, earned through competence and sacrifice rather than demanded through pride. After the session, Rachel walked through the station toward the new Joint Military Academy. Ross had been teaching there for 4 months, transforming council officers into actual warriors. The academy occupied an entire section of the station, its corridors filled with young officers from 60 species, all wearing similar uniforms regardless of their biological differences. She found Ross in a lecture hall, addressing a class of 30 cadets. Torvin sat at the front, now an instructor himself. "The key principle," Ross was saying, "is that military strength exists to prevent war, not to start it. Humanity spent thousands of years perfecting violence. We got very good at it, but the real achievement was learning when not to use that skill." A young Telnari cadet raised his hand. "But instructor, doesn't preparing for war make war more likely?" "Good question." Ross pulled up historical data. Earth's 20th century provides the answer. We had two catastrophic wars that killed hundreds of millions. Afterward, we developed weapons capable of destroying our entire planet. Did that make war more likely? She showed data on major power conflicts after nuclear weapons development. War between major powers essentially stopped. Mutual destruction made conflict irrational. Preparation prevented war more effectively than any treaty. But the swarm wasn't rational. Another cadet pointed out. Exactly, Ross nodded, which is why we maintain both diplomatic capability and military readiness. Rational enemies can be deterred. Irrational ones must be defeated. The skill is recognizing what you're facing. Rachel listened from the doorway, impressed by Ross's teaching ability. The captain had found her calling. After the class dismissed, Rachel approached, making warriors out of them. Making thoughtful warriors, Ross corrected. The galaxy doesn't need mindless soldiers. It needs people who understand the responsibility of violence. She gestured to the departing students. Most of these kids have never seen real combat. They know the swarm through historical records. My job is teaching them that history without traumatizing them. How's Torvin doing as an instructor? Rachel asked. Better than most humans, Ross admitted. He's lived the transition from council doctrine to human tactics. He can explain it in ways that resonate with council species better than I can. She pulled up training records. His students show 40% better adaptation rates than students with human-only instructors. They walked together toward the memorial gardens. The station had dedicated an entire biodome to remembering the dead. 4 billion names carved in stone, arranged by species and homeworld. Human design, but adopted by the council because it honored every individual rather than reducing them to statistics. Vornith was there, standing before the section dedicated to his homeworld. He had lost his entire family in the initial swarm attacks. Ambassador, he acknowledged Rachel's approach. Captain, High Counselor. Rachel stood beside him, looking at the endless names. I think of them often, Vornith said quietly. I wonder if they would have survived had I listened to your first warning. His antennae drooped. I carry that question every day. You can't change the past, Rachel said gently. But you've changed the future. The new defensive compact, the joint military command, the memorial tradition. You've honored their deaths by ensuring we don't repeat the mistakes. Small comfort, Vornith replied. But I suppose it's the only comfort available. He turned to face them. I wanted to tell you both. The Council is voting tomorrow on a proposal to establish Earth as a permanent senior member with veto authority on military matters. It will pass. No one will vote against it. Rachel and Ross exchanged glances. That's quite an honor, Rachel said carefully. It's recognition of reality. Vornith corrected. You saved us, not just with your ships and tactics, but with your philosophy. The idea that preparing for war doesn't mean wanting war. That strength exists to protect rather than to dominate. His mandibles clicked, and what Rachel had learned was his species' equivalent of a sad smile. We were children playing at civilization. You were adults who had survived the childhood. 3 weeks later, Ross stood before a graduating class of officers. Admiral Harris had asked her to give the commencement speech. She looked at the faces representing dozens of species and felt the weight of responsibility. You're the first generation to graduate from a truly unified military academy, she began. Your predecessors learned warfare through necessity and tragedy. You have the privilege of learning from their experience rather than repeating their mistakes. She activated a hologram showing the approaching machine probes. In 18 months, we face a new challenge. We don't know if these machines are hostile. We don't know if they can be reasoned with, but we do know we're ready. She looked across the assembly. Ready not because we want to fight, but because we respect the possibility that we might have to. Ready not because we fear the unknown, but because we're prepared to meet it with both weapons and words. The galaxy learned a hard lesson. Ross continued. Arrogance kills, complacency kills, but so does unnecessary aggression. Your job, as officers in this new combined fleet, is to walk the line between vigilance and wisdom, to be ready for war while working for peace, to be strong enough to protect the weak and wise enough to know when strength isn't the answer. She paused, seeing Torvin in the instructor section. Remembering their first meeting during the chaos of Harper 9, an old Earth philosopher once said that those who want peace must prepare for war. But I'll add this. Those who prepare for war must never forget why they want peace. Remember that. Remember the names in the memorial garden. Remember that every conflict avoided is a victory just as important as every battle won. The graduates stood at attention, young, eager, trained in the hard. Lessons humanity had learned across millennia. Ross felt hope for the first time since the swarm arrived. Maybe, just maybe, the galaxy would be ready for whatever came next. Admiral Harris watched from the viewing gallery. Beside him, Vornith observed the ceremony. "Your species has given us a gift," the High Counselor said. "Not just military expertise, but perspective, and you've given us a gift too," Harris replied. "A chance to use our experience for something other than our own survival. A chance to protect others instead of just defending ourselves," he smiled. Maybe that's what the galaxy needed all along. Someone who knew how to fight, teaching everyone else how not to.